What should you be eating, how much of it, and when in order to put on lean muscle mass? Today's episode is part 2 of how to build muscle. Last week we talked about how to train in order to build muscle, and today we're going to talk about the nutritional principles that you need to follow in order to build lean muscle mass. You're going to learn how many carbs, protein, and fats you should be eating. You're going to learn why it's important to time your carbs strategically and how to do that. You're going to learn why fat is not your friend when building muscle, and you're going to learn about how much muscle you should expect to gain and in what period of time. Today, I'm really excited to get into part 2 of the nutrition side of building muscle because a lot of you guys know I'm currently in a muscle mass phase of my training and nutrition, and I've been going about it for the last just 2.5 weeks now, but I've really loved the journey and loved all the things that I've learned, so I want to share a little bit of the nutrition side of for you guys today. So gaining muscle mass is not very easy. Now, when you begin your resistance training journey, adding muscle mass is actually relatively easy, but the more advanced you get, the more difficult it's going to become. The more advanced you get, the more precise you really have to be. So it's not enough to simply train the right way to build muscle mass. When you're more advanced, you've got to be dialed in with your nutrition. But what do you need to eat? How much of it? And when do you actually need to eat it? Well, that's can be a little bit confusing because most nutrition information out there that you're going to hear, whether it's on YouTube, on podcasts, or on Instagram, or anything like that, or at least most of it seems like, is going to be based on losing body fat because that's really most people's goals out there right now. But there are actually a lot of different things that you need to do if you want to build muscle compared to if you want to lose body fat. So we're going to discuss 4 things today to follow in order to gain muscle mass, and then I'll finish with giving you how much muscle mass that you can expect to gain and in what period of time. And to let you know that I currently have a goal of adding on 3 to 8 pounds of muscle mass over the next 10 weeks. My body weight started at 164.7 pounds. That was my average body weight for the week before I started. And the goal is to finish with about an average body weight of 175 pounds. So maybe a total of 10 pounds gained in body weight over 10 weeks. Now, the 4 things that we need to follow in order to gain muscle is eating in a calorie surplus. Number 2 is about carbs, how much, the timing, and what kinds. Number 3 is the protein, again, how much, timing, and what kinds. And number 4 is fat, how much, timing, and what kinds. And then, like I said, I'll finish off today with gain rate expectations. So let's go ahead and dive in. Number 1 is eating in a calorie surplus. Now, it is possible to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. I've seen it time and time again with the clients that I coach. But most of the time, people who are trying to simultaneously lose fat and build muscle, if you're on the advanced end of the spectrum, it's going to be very difficult. So oftentimes people who lose fat and build muscle at the same time are people who maybe haven't been eating very clean or very consistently. Maybe they haven't been exercising consistently or some combination of the two. But again, the more advanced you get, the more difficult it becomes to do both simultaneously, at least in my experience with myself and my clients and what I've seen in the data. So once you get to the point when you're pretty dialed in with these things, in order to gain muscle mass, being in a calorie surplus is key. A calorie surplus means you're eating more calories than you're burning. To know how many calories you should be eating, I'll have a link in the show notes below to a simple macro calculator online. Now, is that going to be perfect? No. Is it a place to start? Absolutely. And when it comes to tracking calories, to be honest, it can be a pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie. I have never liked it. And again, completely honest with you, I've really never done it consistently. In preparation for my upcoming goal, here's how I approached it. I learned how many calories I needed to be eating. I learned how many macros I need to be eating. And then I mapped out a sample meal plan. I mapped out meals for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Actually, I'm doing 4 meals a day, so kind of 2 breakfasts, a lunch, and a dinner. I mapped out meal options for what it looks like in a day and what it looks like across a week in order to hit my macros. And I did the math on the front end. Therefore, I'm not having to track my macros and track my calories to a T every single meal. Now, am I hitting the calories and macros to a T every single meal? I'm probably a little bit off every here and there, but the prep work that I did in advance is going to ensure that I'm pretty darn close most of the time, therefore still getting all the benefits that I need to. But if you're somebody who doesn't care about counting calories and tracking your macros, then more power to you. Go for it. But if not, there's still a way to go about it where you don't have to undergo that seemingly laborious process every single meal. So kind of in summary with the calorie surplus, if you want to most predictably gain muscle mass, especially if you're more intermediate to advanced, then you want to eat in a calorie surplus. This makes it so your body has the raw material and the energy needed to build new muscle tissue. Now, we're getting ready to dive into macros, and today we're talking about, I want you to provide some context. Today we're talking about the most predictable way to build muscle, the most scientifically proven way to build muscle. I say that because you can still build muscle without doing this, but are you going to be building as much muscle as efficiently as you could? Probably not. So if you want to build as much muscle in as short a period of time as possible and stay healthy while doing so, here's how you do it. Let's start off with protein. How much? You want to aim to consume about 0.7 to 1.0 grams of protein per pound of your ideal body weight per day. So for context, for example, for me, I currently weigh about 165 pounds, or I guess I did at the start, and my goal is to weigh 175. So I'm eating about 165 grams of protein per day. Now, what about timing? Really, the best way to go about it is to evenly space your protein consumption throughout the day. This allows your body to stay in more of an anabolic state or a building state and prevent being in a catabolic state or a breaking down state for the entirety of the day. And so, for example, again, my goal is to eat 165 grams of protein per day across 4 different meals. So I'm eating 40 grams of protein for 3 of those meals and 45 grams of protein for 1 of those meals, and that's my post-workout meal. So it's not super critical that you get in excessive amounts of protein post-workout. Just make sure that you're evenly spacing out your protein across the day. Now, what kind of protein? Well, high quality protein is key in optimizing your muscle growth journey. Really, the best sources are complete proteins in the form of animal products like grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken and eggs, egg whites, poultry, wild-caught fish. Some other great sources are non-fat Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and edamame. Now, I'd recommend using a protein powder as well in order to make sure you're hitting your protein targets. Whey protein has been proven to be most effective. Again, we'll have a link in the show notes of the protein powder that I use from Flav City. Some plant sources are okay, but typically they have a lesser optimal amino acid profile for muscle building, because the most important amino acid when it comes to muscle building is called leucine. And in animal products, you have a higher concentration of leucine, much more so than you do in plant products. So you'd really have to eat a ton of that plant protein in order to get sufficient amounts of leucine. And then also, oftentimes, the proteins are not as easily digestible and as usable of a form. Last thing I'll say around protein is a word of caution that protein can be very filling. If you're aiming to eat in a calorie surplus, then eating a ton of protein can make you so full and can actually hold you back from eating enough. So you can fluctuate somewhere between that 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight in a way that makes most sense for you. For example, if you're eating 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight and you're getting overly full and you're not able to hit your calorie mark, then you might want to decrease the amount of protein that you're intaking and then increase the amount of carbs that you're intaking. So again, to kind of give you a brief summary on protein, how much? Eat 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight per day. You can also think about it as around 30% of your total calories. Timing. Space it evenly across 3, probably 4 meals a day. That could include a snack or a post-workout shake. And then what kind? Animal sources are best. And while most people think that protein is king when it comes to building muscle mass, that's actually not necessarily the case. I know I've had so many people ask me about, man, you're building muscle, like how much protein are you eating? And that's a natural first question because protein is the building blocks of what makes lean muscle tissue, but it's actually not one of the most important things it is super important in building muscle tissue, but arguably making sure that you're eating enough carbs to fuel that process is super important as well. Because like I said, protein is key to have the raw material of which muscle mass is constructed, but carbohydrates are key to helping fuel that process. So let's dive into carbs. First off, how much? Now, of the 3 macros, carbs, protein, and fats, carbs are the ones that you should traditionally vary the most depending on what your body composition goals and our athletic goals are. And you should basically adjust the amount of carbs that you're eating based on your activity levels and your health history. For example, if your health history is if you're overweight and you're insulin resistant and you're metabolically inflexible and have high blood glucose and blood insulin levels, then carbs are probably not going to be your best friend. If that's you, I'd recommend that you don't follow these guidelines for a muscle building phase. These recommendations are more for people with no real health issues at the moment, no experience of carb intolerance, and are of a healthy body weight. I'm not a licensed dietitian or licensed to practice medicine, so always seek guidance from your primary care provider before making changes to your diet and exercise routine. However, let me speak from the science that I've learned, my knowledge, and my experience. To keep it simple, your carb intake should go up and down in direct relationship with your physical activity. I mean, the more you exercise, the more active you are, then the more you're going to be able to utilize carbohydrates efficiently and effectively. The less active you are, the more sedentary you are, the less exercise that you do, the less tolerant you're going to be to high amounts of carbohydrates. So this can also change from week to week, change from day to day. So this is kind of like the protocol that I'm following. If I am active throughout the day, meaning I'm walking a lot up and down, doing things, and I'm exercising, then I would consume about 1.7 to 2 grams of carbs per pound of my body weight. Now, days that I'm not very active, but I still work out, I consume a little bit less, maybe 1.5 to 1.7 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. And then on days that I'm not active and that I don't exercise, I'm consuming even less, 1.2 to 1.4 grams of carbs per pound of my body weight. That is currently my routine with my muscle building goal. And that's not a prescription for anybody. I wanted to provide you some context as to what I'm doing on my current muscle building goal. Again, these are not pulled directly from science literature. They're just numbers that I am implementing. So for me personally, on days that I am active and I exercise, I'm eating 315 grams of carbs. And days that I don't exercise and am not all that active, I'm eating about 235 grams of carbs. Now, the timing of those carbs, the timing is actually super important. I've learned that timing of carbs post-workout is actually more important than timing of protein post-workout. So carbs are important both before our workout for fuel and after our workout for replenishment. Before our workout, they're going to help us perform our workout at a high intensity so that we can really get after it, so we can push ourselves hard enough so that we can provide our muscles with that growth stimulus. After our workout, carbohydrates help to replenish muscle glycogen stores that were just depleted during that workout, and they help to stimulate something called mTOR, and the muscle building process. So consume around 1/3 of your daily carbohydrate intake in your post-workout meal, around 30 to 60 minutes post-workout. That's going to help to maximize what's called the anabolic window, the window of maximal opportunity in order to build muscle. And again, I'm going to kind of keep coming back to my specific example just to give you some hard numbers and maybe some context to go off of. So I am currently consuming 115 grams of carbs in my post-workout meal about 30 minutes after my workout. Now, before your workout, you can consume maybe a full meal containing about 20% of your daily carbohydrate intake a couple hours before your workout. You can also, if you'd like, consume maybe some more quickly, more fast digested carbs about 30 minutes prior to your workout to provide you with more fuel and more energy. Now, what kind of carbs? After you work out, starchy carbs are going to be best for replenishing muscle glycogen stores. Consuming things like rice, potatoes, lentils, and quinoa are really good for replenishing those muscle glycogen stores. Now, before you work out, you mainly want to be concerned with not having slow digesting carbs too close in proximity to your workouts. If you have a big bowl of rice and potatoes 30 minutes before you work out, you're probably going to feel pretty bogged down for your workout. So some quick, fast digesting carbs might be something like having fruit before your workout. And while fruit is super healthy and fruit is great for fuel before a workout, it's fine after your workout, but know that fruit doesn't serve the purpose of replenishing muscle glycogen stores. So it's optimal to have some starchy carbs post-workout. Now, outside of those meals, I'd recommend ensuring that your high-calorie diet is still mainly consisting of whole foods for other health reasons. So I would aim to consume about 2 to 5 cups of veggies a day and about 1 to 3 servings of fruit per day. Now, another word of caution here for the end of the carbohydrate conversation is when you start eating more than normal or in a calorie surplus, it can lead you to being more full and potentially leading to some digestive distress. So be wary to not consume excess amounts of fiber, because this will help you from getting over full, which will help digestive stress. Now, fiber, generally speaking, super, super healthy. I always recommend to my clients to make sure that you're hitting your fiber goals. But If your goal is to put on muscle mass and the goal is to eat in a calorie surplus, then a lot of fiber can just make you more full, therefore sometimes potentially holding you back from hitting your calorie goals. So again, summary, how much you want to make sure you're regulating your carbohydrate intake up or down based on if you're active that day or if you're sedentary, and based off of you exercise and what kind of exercise that entails. And you can think about it as maybe about 40 to 50% of your total calories. The timing of it, consume enough carbs before your workout so you're properly fueled, and then consume about 1/3 of your daily carbohydrate intake in your post-workout meal. And then lastly, what kinds, maybe again, fruit before your workout for some energy, or maybe a full meal 2 to 3 hours before your workout and then post-workout, you want to consume starchy carbohydrates in order to optimize the muscle growth process. So we talked about protein, carbs. Now let's talk about fats. Now, fats don't make you fat. I want to make sure you guys don't get the wrong picture from this fat conversation, because when it comes to building muscle, fat plays basically no role to my understanding. And the only role that it does plays would be inhibiting the muscle growth process and or holding you back from a really great workout. So let's dive into it. Fats are super important for organ health, for hormone health, cellular health, brain health, and more. But that said, like I said, when it comes to the muscle building process, we want to be a little bit more wary of fats, mainly because protein and carbs are most important for muscle building. Like I said, protein is the structure for the muscle. Carbohydrates help to fuel the process. And so if you eat too many fats, then that can hold you back from eating enough protein and enough carbohydrates. And secondly, because of timing purposes, which I'll get into in just a second. So how much fat should you maybe be consuming if you're looking to build muscle? Now, I'm currently eating about 0.45 grams per pound of body weight. So my goal for me is 75 grams of fat per day. And I'd recommend something similar for most people, and that will come out to around 20% of your calories, give or take. Now, the timing of it. For timing of fats, it's less about what you do and more about what you don't do. Eating fats right before your workout isn't ideal because fats aid to slow the digestion of your food. And so if your food hasn't been fully digested when you go into your workout, then it might just come back up. And you don't want to be throwing up during a muscle building workout. Then eating fats right after your workout isn't necessarily ideal because of the same reason, because fats slow digestion of your food, and you want to optimize that post-workout anabolic window, that post-workout building window, and fat slowing digestion down can lead to suboptimal building post-workout. So that's one of the reasons that carbs are preferred post-workout in comparison to fats. Now, I'm currently spacing out my fat intake pretty evenly throughout the day. Again, goal is 75 grams a day. I'm eating about 20 grams of fat in 3 of those meals and 15 grams of fat in 1 of them, and that's my post-workout meal. Now, what kinds of fats should you be eating? What kinds of fat are less important specifically for the sake of building muscle, but for the sake of health and for the sake of keeping your fat intake lower? Your fat should primarily be coming from a few different places. One, just like your protein sources like grass-fed beef or wild-caught salmon. Other healthy fat food sources like cheese, avocados, nuts, and seeds. You just want to make sure you're careful on the portions. And then it all should be coming from healthy oils like extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil when you're doing your cooking. Lastly, word of caution, just because we're limiting fat intake or being more wary of fat intake during a muscle building process does not mean at all that fats are unhealthy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when it comes to specifically building muscle, fat intake doesn't assist in that. So again, a quick summary, maybe around 0.45 grams of your current body weight or around 20% of your total calories. Timing, just avoid eating too much before or after your workout. And then what kinds is let your fat sources come from your protein, your other healthy fat sources, and cooking oils. Now, lastly, I want to get into gain rate expectations. This last section is honestly something I didn't really know very much about until I more recently learned through my education from Renaissance Periodization, which is an amazing company, and more specifically, Dr. Mike Israetel. He's somebody who has access to a lot of the science and a lot of the studies and one of the most respected people in this space. And he teaches that a gain of 0.25% to 0.5% of body weight each week is what your goal should be if you're in a muscle building phase. If you're seeing an average gain that's less than that 0.25%, then you might want to eat more. And if you're seeing an average gain of above 0.5%, you might want to eat less because maybe you're adding too much body fat in too quickly of a period of time. And that's ideal for muscle mass gain and minimal body fat gain. Because when we're eating in a calorie surplus, it's almost going to be impossible to not expect to put on some body fat. You just don't want it to be excessive amounts. We want it to be primarily increase in body weight from increase in muscle mass. He teaches to ignore what happens with your body weight after the first week of eating in that calorie surplus, because the fluctuations in weight are mainly just going to be water weight. You're probably not going to be adding too much actual body fat and too much muscle tissue in that short of a period of time. And then he says after that, look at your body weight in a span of 3-week increments. See what your gain has been in 3 weeks. See what your average gain has been. And then if you need to adjust your calories up or down after that, then do so as needed. To provide some clarity to figure out what a gain in body weight should look like. Again, he says 0.25% in body weight to 0.5%. So if I'm doing that 0.25%, I would take my body weight and multiply that by 1.0025. And then to figure out a 0.5% gain in body weight, I would take my body weight and multiply that by 1.005. So they're going to be pretty small gains. I mean, for me to go from 165 and bump that up by 0.25%, I would just go to 165.4. To bump it up by 0.5%, it would just go to 165.8. So relatively minimal gains over a weekly basis, or at least it's only minimal in relationship to maybe your expectations on them. So don't have faulty expectations as to how much you should gain over a period of 1 week. Okay. That was a lot. If you guys are actually in a muscle building phase, you really care about building lean muscle, then make sure you take notes on this episode. Go back, take notes as need be, because there's some really great stuff right here. Building muscle mass is not easy, but it's 100% possible. Again, if you're early on in your fitness journey, you're probably not going to have to be all that precise in order to build muscle. As long as you strength train and you're pushing yourself and you're not eating crazy low amounts of food, you're probably going to be adding muscle mass. But the more advanced you get, the more precise you'll have to be. And I like to consider myself a little bit more on the advanced side of things. And so that is going to require me to really be precise with both the training and the nutrition approaches that I'm taking. So remember, this is part 2 in the 2-part series on hypertrophy, on how to build muscle mass. And more specifically, I related this to my current goal of adding 3 to 8 pounds of muscle over 10 weeks. I'm currently in the middle of my 3rd week, and I'm following the training and nutrition principles that I've laid out in this series. I want you to, if you care to, if you don't care, don't. But if you care to follow me along this journey, follow me on Instagram at carrier_bestyou to see how it all goes and see how it all plays out. I'm usually posting almost every single meal on my Instagram stories. Like it or not, sorry. And I'm posting about my workouts as well. So if you're looking to put on muscle mass and or lose body fat, then be sure to check out our 10-week transformation. I will personally coach you with whatever goal that you have. Our next program is open for registration, and it's going to run from April 22nd to June 27th. You can join in person in Nashville or the virtual program from anywhere. There are limited spots available, so make sure you sign up today and you jump on it at nickcarrier.com/10WT. Again, nickcarrier.com/10WT. I hope today provides you with education. I hope it provides you with information that you can implement to hopefully build some muscle if that's your goal, so that we can look the way we want to look, feel the way we want to feel, and perform the way that we want to perform. I hope this episode allows you to get closer and closer to your health and fitness goals, and ultimately closer and closer to your best you.